I'm Anastasia Chatzka. I'm a fashion designer, pattern maker, and sewing educator, and I'm so happy you're here sewing along with me today. Welcome to Sewing Anastasia, and today I'm going to show you how to sew a zipper, just a regular old zipper, and I'm going to show you the easiest, fastest way to do this. I have sewn thousands of zippers, and this method works for me every single time, so check it out. If you're not already a subscriber to Sewing Anastasia, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell because I put out sewing content every single week, so many sewing videos. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget, I also teach sewing classes in my design studio in Chicago, Illinois, and virtually, so check those out at sewinganastasia.com. This zipper technique is universal. You might be putting a zipper in a jacket, in a bag, in a dress, in a skirt, down a sleeping bag, maybe in a snowsuit. Zippers are everywhere. So I'm going to show you the easiest way ever to insert a zipper. And I'm going to be using these two pieces of fabric as my opening where my zipper is going to go. We're going to pretend maybe that this is the back of a skirt. So let's put our zipper in. The first thing we need to do is put our fabric right sides together and line up the edge of your fabrics. And once you have those nice and lined up, we need to figure out where the end of the zipper is going to be. So you want your zipper tape to come all the way to the top of your project. And then we want to stop sewing our first seam right where the bottom of the zipper is, which is where this little metal spot is. So I'm just going to put a mark over here. So I know that that is where my first stitch needs to stop, which is going to be my basting stitch. So what we're going to end up doing is sewing all the way down to this point with a basting stitch. We're going to stop, put a regular stitch on, we're going to back stitch, and then we're going to continue sewing all the way down to the end of our project and then back stitch again. And then we will insert our zipper. If you're wondering what a basting stitch is, it's a temporary stitch. So take your stitch length, make it as long as it'll go, and don't back stitch at the beginning because we're gonna go back later and remove this basting stitch. You might be wondering, why am I gonna sew this seam up and put a basting stitch there if I'm gonna go back and remove it later? Why do that? Why take the extra time? Well, by doing this, you are gonna get a nice, crisp, even seam allowance on both sides of the zipper, and it's not gonna overlap funky or do anything weird. It's just gonna be nice and crisp and beautiful. And it's so easy to remove the basting stitch at the end. And actually, by doing this one little extra step, it's gonna make the whole process easier. So let's head over to the sewing machine and sew up our seam. I have my basting stitch selected, which means I have a stitch length of 5, and I have my fabric over to the 5/8 of an inch mark. So I'm gonna have 5/8 of an inch seam allowance here. And make sure you do not back stitch on this. And we are gonna sew all the way down to that chalk mark. So there's my chalk mark. I'm gonna make sure my needle's in the fabric. I'm going to turn my stitch length back to my regular stitch length, which is 2.5 on this machine. I'm going to back stitch, and then I'm going to come all the way down the fabric and back stitch again. When you get to the end of your project, back stitch and cut. So to review, we've started at the top of our project with our basting stitch, all the way down to the chalk mark. We put our stitch length back to 2.5, which is a regular stitch length, and then we've continued all the way down to the bottom of our project and back stitched again. So now what you need to do is iron open your seam allowance. So take your project, and on the wrong side, make sure you're ironing open your seam allowance. You want to press this nice and flat. Now that we have our seam nice and flat, we need to take our zipper and place it face down. So we want the zipper pull to be at the top of our project here. And I also want you to unzip it. Now what we need to do is line up this side of the zipper with the seam that's right here, that's sewn together. So when we sew, we need to make sure that that's staying center, not over here or on the other side of the seam. We really need to keep the edge of the zipper here centered with that seam. So in order for this to turn out perfect looking, it's all about the first stitch we do. Because what we're gonna do is put on our multi-purpose zipper foot. and we're gonna sew all the way down, and then we're going to zip it up, and then we're going to sew across the zipper, leave our needle in, we're gonna turn, and then we're gonna sew all the way back up the zipper. So the positioning of the first stitch on the zipper is very important. So when we're stitching down the side of the zipper tape here, we want to be stitching in the middle of the zipper tape. We don't want to get too close to the teeth, otherwise it's not going to zip up properly. So when we do an invisible zipper, we need to get right next to the teeth. But when we do a regular zipper, we want to stitch in the middle of the zipper tape. So let's sew up that zipper. It's going to be so easy, I promise. So I have my universal zipper foot connected to the right side, and my needle position is center. So remember, you need to keep the zipper teeth here at the very center of the seam. This is a permanent stitch, so make sure you have your regular stitch length on, and also make sure you back stitch at the top. And make sure your fabric doesn't get eaten by the machine. So I just like to keep lining it up as I'm sewing. So I'm holding it with my fingers, but I'm not holding it so much that it's preventing it from moving forward. So now that we're at the bottom, we're gonna leave our needle in the fabric, we're gonna lift up our foot, and we're gonna zip up that zipper. Now what we can do is sew down just a little bit more. And now we can turn our fabric so that way we can sew across the zipper. And now, how do you know where to stop? Well, you wanna make sure that you're the same distance from center on this side as you were on that side. So you could measure it, or you could eyeball it. Looks like it's about 1/4 of an inch, so I'm gonna come over 1/4 of an inch, leave my needle in, lift up my foot, and turn. And now we're gonna sew all the way back up. Now when you're doing this, it's really important to make sure that your fabric is flat because you don't want the fabric to get under your zipper and create any bubbles. And now as long as everything is flat, you can sew right up the side of the zipper. Now when you get to the top where the zipper pull is, just push it out of the way so that your zipper tape here is nice and flat, and sew all the way up. Back stitch at the top and cut. So we have one step left, and that's opening up that basting stitch so that way we can get to the zipper. So let's take a look at our progress so far and open up that seam. So this here is the back of the zipper. So you can see how we came down, we came across the zipper, and we came back up. And now if we flip it over, you can see the little channels that we've created. And I've used a nice contrasting thread so you can really see it. And now what we want to do is take our seam ripper, and we can very easily open up the seam because it's a basting stitch. And it's gonna stop right there where we came across. And also that's where we started our permanent stitch, so it's not gonna go anywhere. And now we can unzip it, and we've got a zipper. So awesome. And all these little extra threads, you can just pull those out. You don't need those anymore. And they just pop right out because it's a nice, easy basting stitch that was in there. And that'll just clean it up. And then you've got a zipper. That's it. So easy. So here's the other side, still looks the same. And then if we unzip it, you can see how that looks from the back. There's one little extra thing you can do. You can take the tail of the zipper, grab the seam allowance, and just stitch back and forth just on the seam allowance on both sides. And that's gonna secure your zipper tails to the seam allowance, and it's gonna create less pressure on the bottom of the zipper here. So that is a great extra little step to add to your zipper finish. Thanks so much for watching Sew Anastasia today. I hope you enjoyed learning how to put in this regular zipper. So super easy and simple. If you have any questions about it, leave it down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you're not already a subscriber, make sure you subscribe because I put out new sewing videos every single week. So much sewing content. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing and watching. And if you don't already follow me on Instagram and TikTok and all those other fabulous social media websites, make sure you follow because I put out sewing content on there every single day. So much sewing content. And I would love to be connected and creative with you. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.